Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with the Honorable Mary K. Wagner, co-chair of the Courtroom Fundraising Committee. Thank you for joining me today.
Glad to be here, Carl.
So tell me about the courtroom.
Well, the courthouse, which is a gem in architectural beauty in our county, and certainly in our downtown city, was built in 1925 and had two courtrooms in it. And they were rather ornate to the time that you would build that type of structure. And over the years, in the 1960s, with the invention of air conditioning, the ceiling was dropped, the ornate architecture of the upper part of the ceiling was drilled into to hang the air conditioning system for the whole courthouse.
Oh, that was one of the courtrooms.
And the other courtroom was remodeled because they needed more space, and they dropped a floor and put the district attorney's office on the third floor.
Oh, that one was lost.
That was completely lost.
So then the other one, you say there was an air conditioning issue that created the drop ceiling?
Yes.
Can you say anything about that issue?
Well, it's an interesting story, historically. Judge Bodie, who was a circuit court judge at that time, wanted an air conditioner because it was scorchingly hot inside of the courthouse during the summer months. And he wanted his office air conditioned so that he could work in his office and be cool at the time. So he ordered an air conditioner installed. Richard Lindgren was the county clerk at the time, and Richard Lindgren was a marvelous person who served later on our county board and various other things, amazing fellow. He said, "Oh, no, you don't. The county board didn't approve this. We don't have the money for it. You can't have it." So it became a court case in which Judge Bodie held Mr. Lindgren in contempt for not installing the air conditioner or not paying for the air conditioner. And it went all the way up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Richard Lindgren was jailed. And he was allowed Huber during the day to go out and work, so at that time the jail was directly behind the courthouse. Marsh Simonson was the sheriff, I think. And so he would go over after work and go to his jail cell. I think then Marsh Simonson would come over, and the story was they would play cards till quite late in the night. And then Lindgren would go to bed, Simonson would go home, and Richard Lindgren would come to work the next day. Ultimately, the Supreme Court said, "You're two very stubborn people." However, and this was a very important decision for the courts have the right to require equipment and services necessary for them to perform their duties. So with that, I don't know if it was instantly or a couple of years or whatever it was, the county, and of course at this time it's the 60s, everybody's installing air conditioning. The county board said, "Okay, we'll put air conditioning in. We'll air condition the courthouse. That's a good idea." And they said, "Well, where do you put all of that equipment for a big building like that? You hang it up from the ceiling." And put a drop ceiling in, which was popular in the 60s also, those white drop ceilings. And that's how we got to the condition of the ceiling that we faced.
So how long was it after the drop ceiling was installed, hiding what was above, that people started thinking there's something above there that we should restore? Or
free up?
I can tell you this, that I became a judge in 1991. And I think at that time, my memory is correct, John Collins was the county exec, and he was touching up the courthouse wonderfully, you know, getting the marble floors polished and getting the walls cleaned from the grime and things like that, installing outdoor lighting that at night the courthouse was absolutely beautiful, interior lighting. And of course, the discussion was, what about that ceiling? Judge Schrader presented, gave a presentation to the county board on the history of the ceiling. He presented pictures from the historic book, which I don't have with me today, that showed what the original condition of the room was, and argued to the county board, we should fix this ceiling. It would really be nice to have an historic courtroom that was beautiful.
And what was this courtroom used for?
Everything. It was always used for everything.
I mean, court cases for sure, but I mean, is this where they did citizenship?
Well, my understanding is long before me, that there were hearings such as that also there. There were two courtrooms, so this was certainly a beautiful one, and the other one was nice too, but of course it got cut up a little earlier. And so yeah, it's a completely functional courtroom. It's had from criminal to civil to family law, probate.
But it was the place to do anything official that you
Yes.
really wanted a nice place to
Oh
do.
yes. When I first was a judge, my recollection might even have been when I was county clerk, we would swear in the probation agents. The probation officer, the person in charge of that office, would bring the new agents over, and we'd have a nice little ceremony in that courtroom for the probation agents. Things like that. But that was like over the lunch hour, because from 8 to noon and 1 to 5, there were scheduled cases.
Right. So in the 90s, this started to become resurrected, if you will. This is something.
The discussion, yes.
Okay. And so how long did the discussion take place before there's something actually started to happen?
Well, okay, so Jim Cruiser created a committee, and I think it was simultaneously with Frank Martinelli, is a person who worked in the engineering department of the county, and they were figuring out what to do about this air conditioning system that was not, it's not a very well functioning system anymore. It's pretty, it's getting repaired quite frequently. So they were up there looking, and Frank looked around and said, oh my goodness, look at this. Look what's up here. And of course there's a glass ceiling that got covered with concrete, which is going to be restored also. But it was covered in concrete in order to close up that ceiling, I guess. So he started looking at it. At the same time, now Jim Cruiser is the county exec, and Jim appoints a committee of John Collins and myself, Judge Warren. I didn't want to leave anybody out, so I wrote it down here. Let me think of who it is. Tamara Coleman, Anthony Davis, Zach Rodriguez, who was on the county board, Frank Martinelli, I think, was on the committee, Heather Iverson, Jane Heidi, Amy Greil. Some people went in and out based on their positions, like Jane was with the foundation, and then Amy was with the foundation. Lenai Quinta. Did I say Neil Gortormson? Very critical member of that committee. Did a marvelous job helping to raise the money. David Hughes from Puntillo's law firm. And of course the county execs were the heads of the committee, other than the co-chairs, you know.
Okay.
So
this committee met?
we met originally under Jim, and and they hired a fundraiser who got us, you know, so that we started thinking about how are we going to raise this money, who are we going to ask, how do we organize the people, and so on.
You
And
mentioned the foundation.
yes,
How instrumental were they in launching the fundraising?
the Kenosha Community Foundation was the financial conduit for collecting the money, and it certainly helped us with activities that we did as we went along to raise the money. In order for these donations to have tax exemption, they had to go to a tax-exempt foundation. Giving a gift to Kenosha County isn't a tax-exempt gift. And the Jeffers Foundation, which we haven't gotten into yet, but as I said, when Frank Martinelli went up and looked in that ceiling, he started looking for ways to raise this money. And he found the Jeffers Foundation, which is the Parker Penn family in Janesville, Wisconsin. And they're very devoted to historical restoration. And they first said, no, we're not interested. And then Frank had them come to see the ceiling, and then they said, we are interested. So they set up an agreement with the foundation and us to say, if we will give you $675,000 for the reconstruction of this ceiling, if you raise funds 2 to 1. So we had to raise 2.3 million.
How much?
Excuse me, 1.3 million. 600 and 600 is 1.3.
Did you
right?
realize it was going to be that much you were going to have to raise, even before the Jeffers Foundation
Well,
grant?
we weren't raising money till we found this Jeffers.
Okay.
You know, I mean, till Frank found it, and then they explored it, and the county got into an agreement with them, and the foundation got into an agreement, and they, you know, there's contracts that go with that about the foundation having the money and giving it to the county. So
At what point did you learn of and have the agreement with the Jeffers Foundation? Was that in 2020?
2021,
Okay.
21, I think. Maybe.
That would have been the year after COVID's.
Well, it was, no, wait a minute. Because we were raising money, we were trying to raise money during COVID. We had to, the date, last June is when was our deadline for raising the money for 3 years. So last June was 24, subtract 3 is 21, okay? So yes, it was 21. That it all got settled in.
Right.
Yeah, so that was the challenge that we had.
So you have to raise $1.3 million within the 3-year time frame.
Yes?
How did you go about raising that money?
Well, there were several people who went about raising it. It started with you know, our committee meeting and talking about who do we contact, who do we know that would ever give us any kind of money for such a project as this. And you know, you kind of make your lists and decide how you're going to approach those people. And then there was a Kenosha Community Foundation event, not connected really to our ceiling. Well, it was connected to our ceiling because they showed the foundation people, the foundation members and contributors and those kinds of people. There was a party at Marcia Caparasso's house. And at that, Frank Martinelli and others showed the pictures and talked about the plan and project. At that party, Betsy Brown, Elizabeth Brown, and Joan Wilk said, we need to have an event that will bring people into that courtroom to show them what the project is. People that are prospective donors and people that know people who are prospective donors.
At this point, was the drop ceiling removed?
No, it's still not removed.
So you couldn't see it?
Well, there's parts of it removed. There was a big section of it removed, so you could look up into the ceiling and see the gold leaf saying and the decorative things, and there were samples of what the walls would be painted as and so on. So yeah, that's okay. So then there was a plan for the party. There, that was really
The impetus?
catalyst. It was a catalyst that helped us. I mean, we were plugging along. We had people who gave us money, you know, but the party or the event in the courthouse. By this time now, Samantha Kirkman is the county executive, and she's kept the committee, and we've changed fundraisers, and you know, professional fundraisers, and we're working on it pretty well, you know, getting people interested in it, and then we have this event, which boosted all of our energy, I think, to say, okay, we can get this done. I mean, these are people coming to see this ceiling. We can do it. We can really do it.
You start out and you kind of are starting to raise money. I don't know if you kept a fever chart of
Oh, we
where
sure did.
you were.
Oh, sure we did.
And
Yeah.
did you find that it was slow going?
It was very
was
slow.
that like bumps and ups and downs?
It was
does
slow. It was slow. Yeah, it was slow. I mean, the U-Lines donated $250,000 while Jim Cruiser was still the county exec, and continued that commitment through Samantha Kirkman, through county exec Kirkman. So, I mean, that was certainly a big bump. A little later on, there were other corporate citizens. Penny Enroth, who had a grandfather, I believe it was, that was a circuit court judge in Kenosha, gave us a very large amount of money. Those kinds of things happened. Brookwood Foundation. Habish and Motier, they were among the first. They were before the party. They were right on it, right at the beginning. I mean, they were very, very good, Habish and Motier. So, I mean, that's how it kind of started. And then once we had the event, I call it a party, it was really a presentation. Judge Julia Nowicki, who is in Illinois, she lives in Pleasant Prairie in Illinois, was a judge in Illinois, has a musical group that presented at the event in the courtroom with a piece that was written, a musical piece that was written, an original composition called The Arc of Justice, and it was about the 14th Amendment. And that kind of was part of our program for that day. It was very well received. It was very interesting. The museum has had it a couple of times, the presentation. It was quite stunning. There's a Mr. Ben Woods who did the oral testimony during this program, who is head of, I think, the theater department at either Bradford or Tremper, one of the schools here, if he's still here. I think he's still here. So, yeah, so that helped us to get it. But you asked the question about how critical was the foundation in this. Foundation was, in my mind, extremely helpful in helping us keep track of how the money came in being the collecting device, in having, you know, a place for donations to be sent, you know. So yeah, they were very, very, very good, and Amy Greil was very helpful in that manner.
So you have this committee and you're looking to raise money. Did the committee members fan out to communities that they were involved with to go, I'll go contact these people, I'm going to reach out to these people, I'm going to go head off over here? How did that work?
They did. That is exactly what they did. They, you know, those of us that were lawyers and judges contacted law firms and lawyers, fundraising parts of those state bar. Other people contacted Neil Guttormson, who contacted lawyers certainly, and law firms. Also contacted businesses that he had, you know, close relationships with, who were generous and gave us money. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I mentioned the Klaus Charitable Trust. That's a local trust. They gave a good amount of money. And Betsy Brown, of course. Then, okay, so then we're almost, we're getting close to where we're going to have this money. And the Tawani Foundation, which is the Pritzker Museum people, Colonel Pritzker, their foundation says, we'll give you $50,000 for your project. Then they said, and we'll give you, I think it was another $100,000 if you'll match it dollar for dollar. So then we had another challenge to raise another $100,000, which we did quickly. And so that they were tremendously generous also, you know, I mean. And there was another corporate citizen who asked to remain anonymous, who gave another $250,000. So there were large donations and there were small donations.
About how many contributors do you know of?
I was counting them this morning, and I think it's around 120.
Okay. And you say there were many of these, several of these large.
Several large,
And then down
you know,
to.
20,000 and above.
Okay.
And then there were donations of $40, $100.
Mm-hmm.
The big ones really mattered when we were trying to meet that goal.
So when-
They were really critical.
Okay, so you're getting close. June of last year was the deadline.
Yep.
Here we are, maybe the winter of January 2020.
Oh, I was so nervous. I was so nervous.
Did everybody else share your?
I don't know. I mean, I would just be like practically frozen about, I'd say, you know, we gotta get this money. We cannot lose this $675,000 that Jeffress has offered us. We cannot lose that money. I mean, that is like a gift. I mean, it is a gift. So we've got to raise the rest of this money.
At
So
what point did you feel, I can relax now?
I'd say it was in April or thereabouts that I thought, okay, we're gonna do it. It's gonna be good. Yeah, we've got it. Yeah.
And you did.
And we did, and we also had the Pritzker amount, the Taiwani Foundation.
But that doesn't pay for the whole project.
No. So, if you combine the Jeffress Foundation generous grant and what we raised, it's $2.3 million. Okay, so you add those two together.
And what part was that funding?
Well, it was aimed at the dome of the ceiling, that part, down to the, what do you call it, drop ceiling, you know, down to that, okay? So, and that we wouldn't do all of it, because of course behind that is the air conditioning, which is not the ceiling project. The air conditioning has to be redone outside of basically the ceiling project, because the foundation didn't say, yeah, and you can redo your air conditioning too. No, it's for the ceiling, okay? So the county, in doing this room, with our money, bonded, well, they passed a resolution that they could bond for not more than up to $4.3 million, which included $2.3 million for the ceiling, their half of the ceiling.
Okay.
And then it also included the HVAC and some of the other restorative things in the courtroom that have nothing to do with the ceiling, other than that there's a sound system that had to be fixed, the floor had to be fixed, the judges' chambers had to be fixed, so it's all in that bundle. Doesn't mean that we haven't got the bids back. I mean, I should say we, I'm not we. It's they have not gotten the bids back because
But they were let out.
they are let out, yes. And, oops, I'm sorry, I touched the microphone. It doesn't mean that they'll bond for the whole 4.3. It just depends on what the bids come back in.
Okay, so right now, we're waiting for bids.
That's what I understand. The county is. That's
Well,
really
right.
that's really not my
Exactly.
purview
No,
at all.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
I mean, they haven't called me up and said, "Hey, Mary, look at this bid." No, that's not my job.
Okay. So, your interest in this project, did you kind of say, Jim,
Well,
let me be on the committee?
No. Jim
Or-
Cruiser said to me, "You're retiring. I want you on this committee."
And you were-
and you are the one who keeps harping about fixing the ceiling. So you can be on the committee and you can be the co-chair with John. Because of course John had a history of working to restore the courtroom, the courthouse, as in his position as county executive. So he was very happy to do that also.
Okay.
You know.
So I just want to get this project done. I have nothing else to say about, don't ask me questions about anything, just let me get the money and that's it.
Well, I mean, I don't get to go in and tell them what color to paint the walls. I mean, if you know what I mean. I just,
You
I
weren't making some kind of statement or anything. I was just, I'm here
Oh,
to get money for the brick and the mortar.
Yes, I was there to help Kenosha County accomplish what I think is a really stunning, going to be a stunning project for generations to come. And you know, I won't be able to enjoy it all that much longer because I'll be gone. But I think we're hoping we're not going to be. This summer is the 100th anniversary of the building of the courthouse, so it won't be quite done then, but it'll be done not long after that. So you know, for the next 100 years, I hope it's still a beautiful ceiling and well cared for and maintained. You know, there needs to be, the reason that, you know, you go to churches in Italy and Rome and you see the august structures that people do to honor a system, okay? And I think that the courthouse is worthy of having an august room that says, you know, we think this much about our courts, about the rule of law, about the citizens of this community, that we should have this beautiful structure. And you know, I was really heart and soul into the project.
Thank you for joining me today.
You're so welcome.